The Rebel Capitalist Show.
I was listening to Russell Brand the other day, who has interesting takes sometimes. And
yeah, he's a bit of a socialist, but he's got interesting takes.
yeah. And but I try to do what you do. I try to listen to all sides and just hear everyone that I think is trying to come from a place of intellectual honesty and intellectual curiosity, and kind of put that together to try to formulate some sort of opinion. But one thing that he said that I really agree with, and I think is lost on a lot of people in social media right now, is he said to understand a situation or to explain a situation doesn't mean that you condone the situation. And
Right.
People, and just, what you're saying there, people need to understand, or what you're not saying there is, you're not saying, hey, I think it's great that Putin, or I can see why Putin is justified in going into Ukraine and starting a war, or doing this invasion. You're not saying that he's justified in doing that. You're just trying to,
neither side is justified.
yeah, you're just trying to understand why. Well, what is the propaganda, acknowledging that it is propaganda. But then what most people have to do, and what they're not doing, is acknowledging that we are being fed propaganda by our media as well. What's staggering to me is that so many people saw the propaganda with COVID, but yet and they were pushing back against the media. But yet now all of a sudden, when the media is saying something that fits their worldview or narrative, now all of a sudden it's not propaganda, it's the absolute truth. But wait a minute, that's the same media that has been lying to you and using propaganda against you to take away your freedoms and liberties, and right along with the politicians and the global elite. That's the same media that's been doing this for the last 2 years. So you think all of a sudden they had a come to church or something, or they had this epiphany, or, oh my gosh, we've been wrong this whole time, we've been using this propaganda, but now this situation is so serious, we're going to abandon the propaganda and just start reporting the straight news. It blows me away.
Yeah, people need to realize that governments are nothing but gangs. And if you know West Side Story, it's the Sharks and the Jets. And that's right now, that's us and Russia. I come from Los Angeles, and they're back in the 70s and 80s and so on. I don't know if it's still going on, but there were the Crips and the Bloods, the two gangs, and they're having turf wars. And there's, gunfights and dead bodies and these turf wars to gain a little ground. When Carl Sagan says in Pale Blue Dot, think of the rivers of blood that were spilled so that I can't remember all of the words, but some leader in his moment of glory can become the temporary master of a fraction of a dot. Because what this is all about, Pale Blue Dot, is when they sent out Voyager, the first big exploration, the first thing that we sent out that left our solar system, Carl Sagan asked if they could turn it back after it had passed Saturn and take a picture of the Earth. That's what you're seeing, is the viewpoint as Voyager is leaving the solar system. You're seeing our home. When he talks about everyone that has ever lived on that pixel, that little pale blue dot.
Right.
And it truly does give you some perspective. So we need to realize that the problem isn't Russia or the United States. The problem is leaders. We elect these people that stay in power by keeping us afraid, and they get in these situations, and they're all sociopaths anyway. If they're seeking public office, the highest public office in the land especially, they believe that they are entitled to rule other people's lives, that they're entitled, that they are more well equipped to make decisions for you than you are, to show you how to run your life. And so this follow the leader mentality is what could end mankind one day. It's something that I've talked about for many, many years, and I worry about it because we're watching, several leaders posturing against each other who's going to win. They're both, and there is a solution. If we say, okay, let's both work to try and make Ukraine a neutral state, but we've been selling the Ukraine on this idea of becoming a NATO member and maybe part of the EU for years. And so now they've bought it and they think that that's going to happen. Putin can't let that happen. We're threatened with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline giving such control over Europe. Well, they can trade those two things. Pipeline, even though it's completed, it doesn't, we end the pipeline, make the Ukraine a neutral state that is a buffer zone. And I think that would be the end of this thing. But 3 days ago, Putin escalated their nuclear defense to the highest level of readiness. So they're basically on our version of DEFCON 5 right now. This is a dangerous situation. Right. We all need to do that, stepping back and taking a breath and gaining perspective. So I just urge all of your viewers to please do that. Once you've done that, once you've looked at, if you look at both sides, all the official propaganda, strip out the differences, look at the core issues, make up your own mind, then help other people do that. Because right now, everybody's letting their emotions rule. Your emotions, whether it's investment or whether it's politics, your emotions will, anybody that trades on emotions knows what I'm talking about. If you let your emotions make your trades, you're going to go broke.
Right. I see the media trying to get people whipped up into an emotional frenzy now with this situation in the exact same way they did it with COVID back in 2020 and in 2021. And a question that I'd love to get your opinion on, Mike, is you talked earlier about how Dr. Malone and McCullough and Corey, everything that comes out of their mouth, the media says, well, this is disinformation, this is misinformation, and we need to ban these people from social media because we can't afford, their views are so dangerous that we can't afford to have other people hear their dissenting view. Do you think we'll get to that point with Russia, where if you have a dissenting view, like what we just talked about, that this will be banned from YouTube or this will be demonetized because they see it just as dangerous as the quote unquote disinformation about COVID?
Well, it's already happening. Russia Today, RT, which is what Max Kaiser is on, is now they're making it so that you can't view that in the United States. Now, if you look back in history, whenever censorship happens, it's always the censorers that are on the wrong side, not the people being censored.
That's right.
I mean, almost always throughout history, when there's something that is a threat to whoever is in power, that's when they don't want anybody to know about it. When it comes to scientific debate or political debate, openness is what allows us to come to the proper conclusion and allows us to heal the wounds between the two different sides. When you shut down one side completely, the wounds never heal and you never come to a truthful conclusion.
Yeah. Another thing I'm concerned with is, and I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but they've started to ban innocent Russians just because they were born in Russia. The Canadian Hockey League, I read yesterday, they are now not allowing the 16 and 17-year-old kids there to try out for the league that were born in Russia. A politician in California suggested that we should ban all Russian students from university.
Unbelievable. We learned nothing from the Japanese internment camps during World War II. Unbelievable how, people need to have empathy for one another and try and think, well, what if I was in his shoes or her shoes?
Yeah, but the pushback that you get there, Mike, is, well, it's not as bad. You're feeling sorry for them, but the Ukrainians are getting bombed and, they're at war here. And so they've got it a lot worse. That's kind of the simple argument that you hear. Well, we should be banning these people from playing hockey because then they'll go back and they'll get mad at Putin. And by the way, banning them from hockey isn't as bad as the Ukrainians being bombed. That's the simplistic argument you hear.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that people do a search on the internet for Professor Merzheimer's video titled "Why the Ukraine is the West's Fault." That's from 2015. So if there's evidence that led up to somebody making this conclusion back in 2015, and then I saw that video of Putin warning that the world is being drugged in this direction and we have to stop this. And he says, I don't know how to get through to you anymore. I don't like Putin. I don't like leaders, though. I have a great suspicion of any political leader, and it doesn't matter what side they're on. But I've never liked Putin. I always thought he was sort of a creepy, evil guy. But basically, he has his point of view and his interests. And in order to make any type of rational conclusion onto what's going on there, you have to understand that, and then our interests and Western Europe's interests. It takes a little bit of effort.
Yeah,
but
you got to
most
understand
people
that
are lazy.
And you got to understand that two wrongs don't make a right. And by
three rights make a left.
By hurting innocent Russians, you're not going to help Ukrainians. And let's think about that slippery slope. Because if you're going to argue that we can do anything to an innocent Russian and it's justified because it's not as bad as what they're doing to Ukrainians, well, where does that end? Do we put them in jail? Do we beat them senseless? But why not? That's not as bad as what the Ukrainians are dealing with. And maybe that would, if banning them from a hockey league or university is going to motivate them to go back and fight against or not vote for Putin in the future, well, beating them or throwing them in jail, well, that's really going to motivate them to go back and stick it to Putin. I mean, that's the level of irrationality that we're dealing with right now.
Well, that's actually the opposite. There's a backlash toward the people that are beating them. So if we treat them poorly, then they would probably end up supporting stance even more. That's what happened in Iraq, and that's what's happened in Afghanistan, and we just don't learn from history.
And the unvaccinated, Mike, it's the exact same thing. Remember, in the United States, and you're in Puerto Rico. I mean, you've dealt with that. We're starting to treat Russians the exact same way, and it's just absolute madness. It goes back to those Japanese camps that you were referring to before, and that no one learns from history.
Right. Yeah. And the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they're just on and on and on. It is a dangerous situation, but more than politically and the potential for the nuclear war, that is a tail risk still, I believe. But it is something that could actually happen from this. Now, Ukraine is a very, very complex situation because it's a very, very complex country. There are sections of the Ukraine where the majority language is Russian, and there are sections that would like to break off and become part of Russia. And so you've got their own population in a tug of war. They really didn't need this, and anybody that attacks any country, I believe, is always wrong. We were wrong when we attacked, but we were sold a bill of goods on weapons of mass destruction when we attacked Iraq. And that this type of propaganda, you have to go and look at both sides and strip out all of the stuff that's different to find what the foundation is of both opinions, of both sets of propaganda. When you strip out the differences, you probably have something a bit closer to the truth to go off of. But the economic consequences that we're going to experience here, I am very worried about what's going to happen to the global economy in the coming years.